So welcome everyone to Advanced Pro University. Today we're going to be focusing less on Advanced Pro Excel itself and a little bit more on Microsoft Excel. Now the techniques that we're going to use will be focused on Excel. All of these techniques can also be performed using any other spreadsheet software such as Google Sheets or OpenOffice. Now, couple things. We are going to be starting with more simplistic formulas and moving up from things like pricing formulas through different tricks for concatenation and building skews. We're going to work with VLOOKUP, which is a little bit more advanced still. We'll talk about how to reformat a sheet that's had some formula manipulation to be able to bring it into Advanced Pro properly. And at the very end, we're going to talk about some very advanced ways of dealing with Excel spreadsheets. Things like macros and clipboard management and things that you can use to fix a form that wouldn't normally be importable, or to fill out forms in Advanced Pro that are not importable at all, or how to fill out fields in Advanced Pro that you wouldn't normally be able to. So these are all different ways that we'll be able to work with Excel to really use it as a powerful tool for updating our products, updating our customers, and working with our data in Advanced Pro. So as our example today, I have created a spreadsheet in Excel. This is a very simple product import. So we've got a product name, SKU, categories, and subcategories. We've got our cost prices, sale prices. We know our vendor. We want to get our image path, and we've also got a couple of custom fields and other fields here. So there is purposely some missing information. We know quite a bit about our product. We know what it's going to cost us and who we're buying it from. And we've used categories and subcategories to set up the different individual products. What we haven't built is a product name in Advanced Pro, a SKU in Advanced Pro for many of these products. We haven't determined our sale price. We want to do that by formula. We haven't got our image path, and we also have this custom field that we're going to be dealing with. That's actually, there's a lookup table to tell us how to fill this in based on some other information. So it's a little bit less direct. So we are going to start with the simplest thing. We're going to work on doing some math here. We're going to look at sale price, and we're going to try and calculate our sale price based on our cost prices in this example. You could also have a column where you have an old sale price and you want to make a new one, say if you want to mark everything up by 10%. So let's go into just one of our blank fields here. Now, to start off with the formula in Excel, you're always going to start with an equal sign, and then you can just perform math. So the plus and minus signs, the star sign, shift 8 if you're going to be multiplying, or just a backslash if you're going to be dividing. So, you know, we could say 450 times 3, and it's going to go ahead and do the math on that and give us 1350. Now, instead of just using static numbers, we can also use the address of our cells to represent the data inside them. So in this example, E3 times 3 is going to go ahead and multiply that out and give us 3348. Now, it gets more interesting if we want to say, let's say we want a 350% markup. So we would multiply our cost by 350 to get 350%. And sometimes this can actually result in fractions of cents, and I'm just going to force fractions of cents to appear. Now this is fine, and Advanced Pro can take that data and charge rounding up or down accordingly, depending on what cent you're closest to. In this case, Advanced Pro, if you sold 1 unit, would give you a final price of $39.44. But if you sold multiple units, it would just depend on how close you came to a cent. But we can actually wrap this in a container. We want to round this to the nearest cent. So we can actually put in a command, and here we're going to put in the round formula. So I'm going to round this value, whatever this math equals out to, and it wants me to actually provide a little bit of extra information than just the number. We actually want to provide, it wants me to see it says num digits, the number of digits, number of decimal places it wants me to round to. So let's say round it to 2 decimal places, so 2 decimal places of cents. Now, that's going to round us back to $39.44. So this is how we can very easily build up our sale prices. Okay, so moving ahead, now let's talk about how to build product names and SKUs and image paths. These are all going to use concatenate, upper, and left. There's also the lower command and the right command if you really need to. So let's look first at our product name. So what we want for our product name, you can see I've built one using this, and let's kind of walk through the construction of this formula. So I'm going to start with equals concatenate. It's going to tell Excel what I'm trying to do. So I'm going to come right up here and say concatenate. There we go. Now, the next thing that it's going to start asking is what are the values that I want in this concatenate formula. So the first thing I want is the vendor name, which happens to be at G3. So G3. That's my first value. Second thing I'm going to want is the size of the socket wrench that I'm dealing with, which happens to be my subcategory. But I want a space in there first. So what I got to do is I got to do a quotation mark, a space, and another quotation mark. So that says put what's in between the quotation marks in my text that you're going to give me. So give me a space. Now we'll put a comma again. And that says now the next thing. The next thing is going to be my subcategory. So that's D3 in this case. There it goes. And you can see it highlights each cell as we grab them. Now the next thing I want a space, but my subcategory doesn't actually have the inches mark. So I'm going to do a quotation mark, a single quote or an inches mark, and a space, because that's what's going in between it and the next value, which is socket wrench, and another quotation mark. So that's going to give me that empty space in between the 5/8 and the socket wrench. Now I want my main category information to go there. So the next one is going to be C3. And you'll see it highlights it again. And now we're going to close our brackets and hit enter, and it's going to go ahead and build our product name for us. So that gives us the basics of kind of putting together this string of data based on other cell information. I do want to touch now on the SKU. And in the case of the SKU, we want to do something a little different. We only want the first 4 letters of the vendor name and a hyphen, and then only the first 4 letters of a socket wrench and a hyphen, and then we want the subcategory. So here's what we can do is we can say equals concatenate, same thing. We're doing the same basic idea. Oh, there it is. And now we're going to say, we don't want the whole thing. We're going to put in brackets. We just want the left part of it. We want left, lets you select the first few characters on the left, depending on how many you set. And you'll see what I mean here. So we'll say left. So we want the left part of what? We want the left part of the vendor. So that's G3. But it takes another thing. It says what's the value, in this case G3, but also what are the number of characters. So we want the left 4 characters. And we're going to wrap that in a bracket, and then we're going to wrap the whole left in the bracket. You can see it highlights in orange here. So left starts here and ends at this bracket. So that's the first thing we're going to concatenate. So you can actually wrap one command or one formula in another one. So inside of concatenate, we're telling it to grab the left 4 characters. We're going to have a space, and we're going to put in a hyphen in between those quotation marks again. Now we're going to head over and we're going to grab our socket. And first we can say, let's just go ahead and grab, again, the left and C3, left of C3, and 4 characters. So we're grabbing that sock. And now we can wrap that up. But let's say we don't want to stop there. Maybe we want to change the case of it. So we can actually put all of that whole left function, we can put that inside of brackets again. And we can put a formula around it. So let's say if we want to make it lowercase, we would use the lower function. If we want to make it uppercase, we would use the upper function. and that'll change your cases for you. So I'm going to do what I did in the line above and just put in our lower function there. So now the first chunk is the left 4 characters of the vendor. Now this one is the changed case left 4 characters of the category. Now I want to go put in another hyphen and deal with the size. So these brackets that you're seeing, these can get very complicated, and you really want to make sure that you're getting your brackets in the right place. This is one of the #1 areas where people might have some difficulty in this process. So here I'm going to go ahead and put in between brackets, put in between my quotation marks another hyphen and a comma, and now I just want my subcategory, which is D3. You'll see it's highlighting again, which means we've done everything right so far. We'll go ahead and hit enter. Oh, and it wasn't happy. Let's see what I did wrong. I likely got a bracket wrong there. Let's just go ahead and grab the one I had done slightly earlier. But again, you're going to want your concatenation. Oh, I see what I had done. I had actually put in a negative concatenate, something like that, and of course it couldn't pull up a value. So you want to make sure that it's equals concatenate. There we go. So that's going to give us our formula. Okay, now we're going to touch briefly on image path. Image path is concatenate again. But for concatenate, I'm just going to review the one that I had built here. What we're doing is we're assuming that all the images happen to be in the same folder, they all happen to be a JPEG, and the file name is the SKU. So what this is going to make is our file name will be C drive images, the way I had set that up. Then our SKU, so snapsock 5/8, and then JPEG. And so that's what it's going to go. And then when we upload this to Advanced Pro, when we import it, this is now going to go ahead and send that path to Advanced Pro. So Advanced Pro can go grab the image. And if you're using our web services, it's then going to send that image up to your web service. Now, you'll notice what will happen with these variables is if I were to cut and paste to the next line, just the same formula, it's always going to change all the variables to match the next row. So here I just cut and pasted that variable, and now it's sourcing the 3/8. It's sourcing all the additional information that's happening on this row. So these are all these addresses, these coordinates that we've put in, they're unlocked in this sense. So our unlocked values are going to move as we go vertically down the page. And also as we move horizontal, they'll go from column B to column D to column C. So we can lock this. And the way that you're going to want to lock that is if we don't want it to move in one direction or another, we put a $sign in front of that coordinate. So if we put a $sign in front of the C, it might move from 4 to 5, but it won't move from sourcing C to sourcing D if we move left and right. If we put a $sign in front of the 4, now that won't change either. So that's always going to refer to this specific cell, no other cell, if we cut and paste it. Now, there are specific reasons why we would want this to be locked, and we're going to be discussing this in this next section on the VLOOKUP feature. So on our VLOOKUP feature, what this is a formula that lets you look up in another table somewhere a value. So we've got this secondary value over here on sheet 2, where we say if it's a socket wrench, it's type 1, if it's an open-end wrench, it's type 2, and if it's a crescent wrench, it's type 3. And what we want a formula to do is for each line, we want it to look at what the category says. If it's a socket wrench, we want it to come over here and see that it should fill in type 1, and then it'll go and fill in that field with type 1. In this case, and this is going to be a custom field for us. Maybe we want it to appear on one of our forms. Maybe we just want it stored in Advanced Pro. But this is how we can look up that data that's sort of disconnected from this information we might already have. We just created a little lookup table, and we use this VLOOKUP feature, and I just want to walk through a VLOOKUP. So to do a VLOOKUP, we'll do equals VLOOKUP. And there's a few related functions that you'll see. There's HLOOKUP, which does the same thing, only horizontal. And you'll also see that there is a just a lookup feature, which is different again. But they're all kind of related. And if you can do VLOOKUP, you can definitely do the other two. So here we are in VLOOKUP. It asks for a lookup value first. What is the thing that I'm going to be searching for? So the thing that we're going to be searching for is whatever is in column C3. There it is, C3. So it goes and highlights it. This is what it's going to search for. Now it asks for a table array, which is really saying, where should I search? And it's over on another sheet. So the first thing you want to do if you're going to reference another sheet is put in the sheet name and an exclamation mark. And that tells Excel, okay, for the next thing, you're going to look over on this other sheet. You're going to look on sheet 2. Now we want to put in a range. So we want to define this square. So it starts in A1 and it finishes in B2. So the upper left and lower right corners, let's tell Excel exactly where those are. So it's A1 to B3. That's where we want it to look, comma. And for these values, we actually want to lock A1 and B3, because if we start to cut and paste this down the page, it's going to look in the next squares down. So it'll move to A2 and B4, A3 and B5, and we don't want that. So now we've gone and defined our array. We've defined the search area. Now the index number is essentially asking, in this array, where's the information you actually want to bring back? So it's in column 2 is how you would define it. So we just say over here it's in 2. Oh, comma 2. That's what the index number is looking for. And finally, this range lookup, it's a true or false. Really, this is asking how you've sorted your data, and you will almost always say false. And we'll close our bracket. Oh, there we go. And we did get a little error, so I'm just going to compare this to my earlier work. So we've gone through, we've got our sheet 2, A1 to B3, 2 and false. Let's just go ahead and grab that and see what it says here. Oh. It can be very easy sometimes to paste in some additional information. Here we accidentally pasted in a thing that broke that formula. Let's just grab that formula now. There we go. Nope. Really wants to leave that information in there. There we go. So there's our lookup for type 1. And now I can look this up. It says type 1 until we get to an open-ended wrench, and now it's going to try and find type 2 if we do things right. And so this is a feature that you really want to be looking for, and it can be tricky. I recommend spending some time with this and learning to really get this format down. I do find it's a little bit simpler to work with in Google Sheets. If you aren't getting the responses that you need, you may need to change this to true. And then you may find that you're getting a better result. Now, one thing that is absolutely vital for this is that your lookups must be exact matches for your lookup table. All right, so we've touched on VLOOKUP now. The other areas that I did want to touch on are just what's necessary as far as these items to get these items into Advanced Pro without creating problems, and to make sure that this Excel sheet is going to be easily accepted into Advanced Pro itself. And I want to touch on what you can do. So you'll go ahead, you'll cut and paste all of your formulas down your entire columns. And then what you'll do is you'll go to Control and A, and that selects your whole table. Now, you can do a couple things that are important here. A good thing to do is go to Format and Clear Formatting, or format everything as text. Another thing that's really good, you can do it here from Clear as well. Another thing that's really good to do is just cut the whole page, Control-C for cut, or right-click cut, and then paste everything as values, and that's going to clear out all of your formulas. So now where we had that big concatenate formula or that lookup formula, we're going to touch on working with just the image path here in the formula itself. So now we just have text, and that's going to be much easier for Advanced Pro to deal with. Now, one of the other items I want to touch on is up here at the top, our headers. You can change a header name. We've got type and value here, and those aren't in Advanced Pro by default. That's fine. When you import things, you will match up your headers to the fields that you want them to sync into. Just make sure you don't add any spaces. Spaces are an important character that can cause some issues when you're trying to import. So make sure that you're using underscores instead of spaces. Now, another thing that you may want to be aware of is if you're using these formulas and things to update your vendors or your customers, make sure that you're using account numbers in Advanced Pro already. If you change your customer or vendor names and you don't have account numbers cited, it will create duplicate customers and vendors. And another thing to be aware of is if you change your SKU, it won't just change the SKU for that item. It will go ahead and create a duplicate item, so be aware of that. So that's just a few rules to be aware of as you're importing these Excel spreadsheets back into Advanced Pro. Now, at this point, this kind of closes the general skills that you're going to see in Excel. And I do want to just touch on a couple of more advanced skills that you can learn in Excel or with Excel, and some additional tools that you can use to really extend what Excel can do. One is macros, and you can use macros to sort of pre-program a whole slew of different operations within Excel. So macros and scripting within Excel or within Google Sheets can really open up a huge gateway. Another thing that I find has a slightly lower learning curve to that is a couple of tools. One is a clipboard manager, where you could go ahead and clip. In this case, we can grab our SKU and a value. So we can get these items into our clipboard manager. And what this does is it essentially records a history of everything that you have cut and pasted. So here, I've got this value. We'll call this value 1. And I'll go ahead and cut that. So then you're going to see 1 show up over here on my clipboard manager. So now we've got a history, and then I can go to my next one and I can grab 2. So we'll grab our second SKU, and then I'll go ahead and grab a second value. So we've got these values and we've got a history. And the nice thing about this is if I want to paste a value, all I have to do is click on it. So for example, if I come back and I want to paste something that I had on my clipboard before, I can come to this area. I can say, okay, I want my SKU to go here. So I'll just click on my SKU, and I can now paste this in very easily. So I can go ahead and just Control V, and that's now the active piece that I can go ahead and cut and paste, just based on what's highlighted here on my clipboard manager. This particular piece of software that I'm using is a clipboard manager called M8 Free Clipboard. It also has a parent product called Spartan Clipboard. So this can be really, really handy, and I'll show you one way you can really extend it. There's a tool out there called Auto Hotkey, and this is a macro tool. What this essentially enables you to do is record clicks and key presses around your screen across several different applications, and replay that exact sequence of events with a hotkey. And there's some really advanced things that you can start to do with this. And just to touch on 1 or 2, we've gone and we've set up these 2 items in our clipboard history, a SKU for each one and a number, a value for each one. Let's say this value is not something we can fill by an Excel file by default. We can use this active window info, and actually it will record things like mouse movements and clicks. So you can see here it's recorded all my X and Y axes and things. What you can do is you can use this to build a little tool for yourself where you can hit, say, Control P, and it will go and run through a number of actions. So it might automatically come back to Advanced Pro and go to View Products, and it might always click on the SKU search. It might always click on the SKU in this position, and it would go ahead and enter that SKU in. So we can very easily go ahead and paste the SKU into these areas, look up the SKU that we're looking for, edit that SKU, and then enter those details into whichever field it was that you wanted to enter this value into. And then at the end of that, we might go and we might delete these items that are in these first two slots. So now we have new items in our slots, and we can go ahead and run through that whole process again. So this is a way that we can automate these sort of bulk cutting and pasting processes that would have taken a lot of time during a standard data entry procedure. If you have a lot of data entry that isn't supported by Advanced Pro's Excel import, this is one way that you can build around that. And if you're looking for more help with this, if you have questions, you can feel free to reach out to our professional services team, and we'll be happy to help you with it. It's really hard to capture this in just a short kind of lunch and learn meeting like this, but it is a very, very powerful tool that can get incredibly advanced if you're willing to invest the time into it. Now, this does bring us to the end of our little tour of advanced functions. If you do have any questions, I do encourage you to reach out to your Advanced Pro advisor.